Almost 90% of the people of Iceland, they use geothermal hot water for heating their home.
So cheap is electricity in Iceland that they are looking to convert it to hydrogen to cut the country's reliance on fossil fuel to zero. Valdis Asta Adelsteindaughter is from Reykjavik. Married with 2 children, she works for the country's Civil Aviation Authority. Valdis says that during the winter, the family keep their heating system at 25 degrees Celsius. She thinks that Icelanders take water for granted, but she also considers her country's water to be the best in the world. Geothermal energy in Iceland first happened in the early years of the 20th century, when an enterprising farmer diverted a stream from a hot spring to heat his house. 4 decades later, the hot water was piped to houses and swimming pools across the island. Blue Lagoon is Iceland's largest geothermal public bath. Opened in 1989, it has become an important tourist spot. Iceland's location on one of the Earth's major fault lines, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, means the country is dotted with volcanoes and hot springs. Reykjavik Energy, Iceland's biggest energy company, runs the Hellisheidi power plant, which is still only partially completed. It's located in the center of the country.
This is our oil or our gold, so to speak. If we didn't have this energy, we would have to import fossil fuels to provide us with electricity.
But there are plenty of other uses for cheap power, and the aluminium industry, which uses huge amounts of electricity in its production smelters, is already taking advantage of Iceland's lower power tariffs. The 3 operating turbines of Hellisheidi provide nearly half of Iceland's electricity. When completed, it will produce enough electricity to provide energy for the whole country. LG Display recently announced that it has developed an LCD display panel that refreshes 480 times every second. But what does this mean? Since flat panel display screens became popular, there has been a debate about the merits of 2 types of flat panel technology, liquid crystal or plasma. While the LCD panels had lower power consumption and better resolution, plasma screens had better contrast and could render fast-moving images more clearly. They could be made bigger too. Now, work done at the LG developmental labs in South Korea mean the company's soon-to-be-released True Motion display panels will have a much quicker response time, eliminating problems associated with fast-moving images. And scanning backlight technology has enhanced the LCD's contrast. LG launched a range of new display screens at this year's Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. They stretch from the very thin picture frame unit to a 60-inch model. The company's 55-inch HD unit has an LCD screen that uses a different system of light-emitting diodes to deliver superior contrast. Another innovation is the separation of the screen from its signal processing electronics. The 2 components connect wirelessly so that the screen can be easily mounted on the wall. In combination with the enhanced picture quality, many of the new screens feature an invisible speaker system. The trend is to make the display unit more like a picture that hangs on the wall, and to highlight this, an array of screens were arranged like pictures in a gallery. The LH50 and PS80 series HD TVs are equipped with Ethernet ports and can access selected web content. And the Tokyo Metropolitan Museum of Photography has just mounted an exhibition called Still Motion, Liquid Crystal Painting, that displays a collection of artworks on flat-panel LCD screens. Dominic Leishman's YOLO V pays homage to Goya's painting The Inquisition Tribunal. As the viewer approaches, his image is imported onto the screen. Sam Taylor Wood's still life pictures a bowl of fruit as it ages over several weeks. Yasumasa Morimura mimicked Vermeer's Girl with the Pearl Earring in his Vermeer study Looking Back by dressing up as the girl himself. Museum curator Satomi Fujimura explains that the artworks have their origins in traditional paintings, but they also explore future styles and directions that become possible as the use of technology in art evolves. Hiroshu Senju's A Forest of Water appears like a traditional Japanese folding screen. Julian Opie's minimalist figures, the woman with evening dress and Kira with a pendant, smile at the viewer. Shiuki Kojima's rhythmic calm, Land of Sand, expresses the constant shifting of the dunes in the wind. One room of the gallery is pitch black, and the LCD screens appear to emerge from the darkness, showing small scenes of moving life. The Tokyo Metropolitan Museum of Photography has always included film in its range of interests, but this LCD exhibition is a new development. It represents a fusion of the moving image and the more traditional framed art hanging on the wall. The space tourism race marked a milestone recently as British entrepreneur Sir Richard Branson and American aerospace designer Burt Rutan waved to a crowd from inside the cabin of a new aircraft designed to carry a passenger spaceship to launch altitude. The White Knight 2 mothership was christened with champagne before a crowd of engineers, dignitaries and space enthusiasts at the Mojave Air and Spaceport in the high desert north of Los Angeles.
That's my second accident. We hope to be able to start a program where we can try to fly people incredibly quickly around the world, from New York to Australia in less than 2 hours.
White Knight 2 is the largest all-carbon composite aircraft ever built. It is the brainchild of Burt Rutan, who made history in 2004 when his Spaceship One became the first private manned aircraft to reach space. That historic spaceflight was accomplished with the help of White Knight 2's smaller predecessor, White Knight. Now the new mothership must undergo at least a year of rigorous flight tests. Retired American astronaut Buzz Aldrin and his wife also took part in the event.
Well, I mean, the publicity benefit would accrue to whom? To me? No. I've been on the moon with Neil Armstrong. See, so I don't need the publicity.
Next step is the completion of Spaceship 2, which will be flown by 2 pilots and carry 6 passengers. Meanwhile, in the established space launch business, Belgian astronaut Frank de Wijn is preparing for 6 months at the Columbus Laboratory on the International Space Station. He will fly with Russian cosmonaut Roman Romanenko and Canadian Space Agency astronaut Robert Thirsk. With the Columbus Laboratory finally functioning, Europe now has a very real long-term investment in the ISS. De Wijn will be doing maintenance on the robotic arm and installing Japanese equipment brought up by the HTV cargo module, which is due to dock with the ISS soon after he arrives. As well, he will be carrying out experiments for scientists back on Earth.
What scientists are trying to determine is if microgravity influences our perceptions of parallel lines. Orientation is something that is very important also here on Earth, how people can orient themselves. Often all elderly people have problems with that, and by trying to measure the processes also in microgravity that are happening in our brain, scientists try to determine if they can find also cures for diseases here on Earth.
In 2002, DeWine spent 12 days in space aboard the ISS for ESA and Belgium's Odyssea mission. The European Space Agency is not taking any chances with its next astronaut, and Dutch ESA astronaut André Kuipers is serving as backup. In support of the upcoming mission, NASA has already sent up a shuttle carrying supplies and equipment. In America's Midwest, billions of tons of corn, once used as food, are now being used to produce ethanol. From this year, controversial federal mandates require the United States to use 34 billion litres of alternative fuel annually. That makes grain a high in-demand product. For those involved in the production chain for biofuels, it means more profit. A full 33% of this year's US corn harvest, or 3.9 billion bushels, is expected to go towards ethanol production, up from 22%. Virtually all experts agree that using crops for biofuel drives up the price of grain, but opinions vary greatly as to how much. The world's poorest people are suffering because of the biofuels initiative. Many can no longer afford the most basic food staples, and there are calls for strong measures to pull the current world food situation out of what some are describing as a crisis situation. Estimates cited by the International Food Policy Research Institute say biofuels account for more than 30% of the food price increases. What is certain is that many people across the developing world are feeling the pinch. White House economic advisors say the ethanol industry accounts for just 2 to 3% of the recent jump in grain prices, which are up more than 40% since 2007. Despite the controversy, most governments are keen to hit their biofuel targets. But even if every bit of corn in the US was used to produce ethanol, American demand for fuel would still not be met. In the Netherlands, a different plant is being tested as a renewable fuel. Algae could be part of the answer to the world's energy crisis. In Western Holland, a shallow pool that is rapidly turning green with algae is being harvested for animal feed, skin preparations, biodegradable plastics, and biofuel. Algae is the slimy stuff that clouds your home aquarium and, in larger form, gets tangled in your feet in a lake or ocean. It can grow almost anywhere there is water and sunlight, and under the right conditions, it can double its volume within hours. Opinions differ on how best to grow algae and how quickly it can come on stream as a commercially viable alternative or supplement to fossil fuel. But scientists and industrialists agree the potential is huge. In a warehouse 200 kilometres southeast of Amsterdam, a bioreactor is producing algae in pressure cooker fashion that its manufacturer hopes will one day power jet aircraft. Algae doesn't require much space or good farmland. It can grow in freshwater, polluted water, seawater, or farm runoff. It can purify a city's sewage while feeding on the nitrogen and phosphates in human waste, and it is rich in oil. The most common strains farmed today have an oil content of 30%, but this can rise as high as 70%. Experts say it will be years, maybe a decade, before this simplest of all plants can be efficiently processed for fuel. But when that day comes, it could go a long way toward easing the world's energy needs and responding to global warming. And it avoids the fuel for food dilemma that has plagued first and second generation biofuels like corn, sugar and palm oil. The European Union has mandated that 20% of Europe's energy must come from renewable sources by 2020, including a 10% biofuel component for transportation fuel. One promising technique nurtures the algae in a closed and controlled environment of clear tubes. speeding the reproductive process by 2 to 4 times. But the process requires much more energy than open pools and needs a tube cleaning system to maintain a high light penetration for photosynthesis. At Ingrapro's farm, the scum from the double Olympic-sized pool is filtered and processed into flaky green strips that crumble to the touch. Potential for the new product is huge.